You open your eyes. A gray British dawn barely breaks through the dirty window glass. Outside, a cold autumn rain taps monotonously. You lie on a creaking bed in an empty bedroom. Your body aches from chronic arthritis and old injuries. Your knees and shoulders hurt from many kilometers, miles of marches in the past. You look at the bedside table made of dark wood. A silver dagger with a winged hilt lies there. This is the insignia of the British Special Air Service, SAS. Under the insignia, the famous motto is engraved: "Who dares wins." You won in many secret battles around the world. But today, you lost the battle with your own thoughts. Nearby lies an old photo of your combat group in the desert. 4 men in dusty boonies smile into the lens. 2 of them were buried in a military cemetery long ago. The 3rd went mad and drank himself to death in a cheap London pub. And you remained alone in this quiet, cold house. You try to get up, but your back responds with sharp pain. 22 years of service erased your civilian identity. You know how to kill silently, survive in the jungle, and stay quiet during interrogations. But you completely do not know how to just live in a peaceful society. Your wife left, taking her things, several years ago. She could not live with a man who never talks, and who sleeps with a loaded pistol under his pillow. You walk to the window and look at the empty, rainy street, and you ask yourself the same question every day. How did a man who passed the hardest selection in the world end up absolutely defenseless against the silence of his own room? But why? I would give you a choice, but this story cannot be changed. Your path was chosen long ago. Let us see how you arrived at this point, starting with the very first level. Level 1, Candidate. Brecon Beacons Mountains. Early morning, an icy Welsh wind hits your face with thousands of tiny splashes. Darkness and fog hide the peak of Penwai Fan Mountain. You stand at the start of the famous Fan Dance March. On your shoulders hangs a wet rucksack weighing 25 kilograms, minus 55 pounds. In your hands, you hold a heavy automatic rifle. You have to walk 24 kilometers to 15 miles along steep slopes. The time is strictly limited by the selection instructors. Candidates set out on the route one by one with a 1-minute interval. There are no shouting sergeants or urging commands here. Instructors in warm jackets just silently watch your preparations. Their indifference presses on your mind harder than any pressure. You take the first step up the stony path. Your army boots slide on wet grass and mud. Cold air burns your throat with every heavy breath. One wrong move on a steep descent and you will break a leg. This will mean immediate dismissal from the selection without a second chance. After 3 hours of walking, your muscles begin to burn with fatigue. The rucksack seems filled with liquid lead and cuts into your shoulders. On a stony pass, you see another candidate. A young guy sits on a wet stone, holding his head in his hands. His rucksack lies nearby, and his rifle has fallen in the mud. He breathes heavily and cannot rise on his own. If you stop to help him stand and take some of his weight, you will lose precious minutes and will not meet the standard. Your selection will be over, and you will return to your regiment. If you pass by, the guy will get severe frostbite, but you will keep your chance to get the coveted sand beret. Your step. Stop and help your comrade, risking failing the main test of your life, or pass by him up the slope for the sake of achieving your personal goal. The story continues. Evening, you reach the finish line at the limit of human strength. Your feet are rubbed to blood, and your hands do not bend from the cold. The instructor silently takes your map and checks the time. He makes a short mark in the sheet and nods toward the tent. You go inside and fall onto a wet sleeping bag. Half of the candidates dropped out of the distance already today. You close your eyes and fall asleep to the monotonous sound of rain, knowing that tomorrow a compilation of even harder marches awaits you. Level 2. Jungle Brunei, primary rainforest. Midday, you survived the mountains of Wales and passed to the next stage. Now you are in the dense tropical jungle of Brunei. An exhausting heat and 100% humidity stand here. The air smells of rotting wood, dampness, and others' sweat. Underfoot crawl thousands of venomous insects and leeches. You make your way through thick brush with a machete in hand. Your clothes are soaked through with sweat and cling to your body. The weapon is covered with a thin layer of grease for protection against rust. The jungle is a test of survival and constant paranoia. You must constantly scan the space around you. Every step can disturb a venomous snake under the leaves, or reveal your presence to an enemy patrol. Your partner walks a 2 meters (6.5 feet) in front of you. He suddenly freezes and raises his hand up. The danger signal, ahead on the path. Fresh tracks of others' military boots are visible. This is a search patrol of instructors hunting you. You have the opportunity to set an ambush and neutralize the patrol, or try to bypass them through an impassable swamp on the side. The swamp will drain all your strength and threatens the loss of gear. But the ambush is a huge risk of being dropped from the course in case of failure. Your decision is made without words, by gestures alone. Engage in a training battle with the patrol on a narrow path, or go into the rotten water of the swamp, saving the stealth of the mission. The day does not end on this choice. You slowly bypass the threat through the sticky swamp mud. Dirty water reaches your waist, and leeches bite into your skin. You drag the heavy rucksack, trying not to make noise with the water. By evening, you exit onto dry ground and set up camp. You sit on the damp earth and treat wounds with antiseptic. The jungle does not forgive mistakes and slowly eats your flesh. You fall asleep on a hammock stretched between trees, listening to every rustle of the wild tropical forest. Level 3. Operator Iraqi Desert. Deep night, you passed all stages of selection and put on the sand beret of the SAS. Now you are a full operator of a combat squadron. Your patrol group was dropped behind enemy lines in Iraq. The task is to search for mobile rocket launchers, but the operation went wrong from the very beginning. Your position was discovered by local shepherds who called in troops. A heavy fight began in the encirclement of superior forces. One of your comrades died on the spot from a grenade explosion. The second received a heavy chest wound and could not move. You shot back to the last bullet in a sandy trench, but the forces were too unequal and you were captured. Now you sit on a cold concrete floor in a cell. A tight burlap hood is pulled over your head. Your hands are tied behind you with barbed wire to numbness. A continuous, maddening white noise stands in your ears. This is the so-called tactical questioning and interrogation. The enemy's instructors apply harsh methods of influence. You are deprived of sleep for 3 days straight, forced to stand at the wall. Cold water pours on your head, causing shivering. The hood is ripped off, and the bright light of a lamp hits your eyes. An interrogation officer in a dirty uniform sits in front of you. He speaks in a calm voice, offering a deal. He asks to name the frequencies of your radio communication and codes, in exchange for medical help for your wounded friend in the adjacent cell. You know that your wounded partner will die without help in a few hours, but giving the codes will put other SAS groups in this area at risk. Your choice in this second, under the light of the lamp. Name outdated communication codes to buy time for your friend, or stay silent, following protocol, leaving your comrade to die. The story continues without an answer. You are thrown back onto the concrete floor of the cell with a hood on your head. The white noise resumes, erasing the boundaries of reality. You lose count of hours and days in this dark, damp box, until an SAS assault group kicks down the prison doors. Not everyone survives. Level 4, Counter-Terrorist Embassy Building in London. At dusk, years of heavy service in hot spots have passed. You are transferred to the anti-terrorist wing of the SAS Special Projects Team. Those very guys in black overalls and gas masks. Terrorists seized the building of a foreign embassy in central London. Inside are 30 hostages with explosive belts. Negotiations reached an impasse. First shots are heard inside. The SAS assault group receives an order for an immediate assault. You stand on the roof of the building, ready for descent on a cable. You wear black armor and a gas mask with dark glass. In your hands is a short submachine gun with a silencer. The window panes explode from directed charges of the assault. You fly into a smoky corridor through the window opening. Screams, explosions of flashbangs, and soot are all around. Smoke blocks the view, making silhouettes blurry. You burst into the central hall of the embassy. Right in front of you stands a man in civilian clothes. His hands are hidden under his jacket, and panic is visible on his face. He makes a sudden movement forward in your direction. This could be a frightened hostage running to the rescuers, or a terrorist ready to activate a detonator under his jacket. You have a fraction of a second before the situation gets out of control. Your step. Shoot to kill, protecting yourself and the group from a possible explosion, or try to knock him down physically, risking the lives of everyone in the hall. The day ends with the assault of the embassy. The building is cleared. The terrorists are neutralized on the spot. Hostages huddle fearfully against the walls in soot. You go out to the street and take off the stuffy gas mask. The fresh London air seems incredibly clean. Hundreds of blue lights of police cars flash around. A crowd of journalists tries to take pictures of your face, but you quickly go into the shadow of an army truck. You remain an invisible hero for this city, but this invisibility no longer brings you joy. Level 5, Veteran Hereford, present day, 6 o'clock in the morning. The rain outside has finally stopped, leaving gray puddles. You sit in the kitchen in front of a cup of cold black tea. Your civilian clothes look simple and inconspicuous. You try not to stand out in the crowd on the street. This is an old habit of a gray man that remained forever. You drive to a local supermarket for a week's groceries. You park the car so that you can see all the exits from the parking lot. In the store, you move along the aisles with a cart. Your gaze automatically scans the faces of passers-by. You evaluate their gait, hand position, and threat level. You cannot just buy bread and milk like a normal person. Your nervous system remained at war forever. Any sharp pop or scream makes your body tense up. You return to your empty, quiet house. You lay out the groceries on a clean table. You take the silver dagger with the SAS insignia in your hands. You look at the winged hilt and the famous motto. You dared and won many years in a row. But the price of this victory turned out to be too high for your soul. You saved hostages, carried out secret orders of the country. But you lost yourself in the process of this endless war. Your San Beret lies in a dark closet like a monument to the person you once were and who you can never become again. Because invisibility in the service of the state is your personal life sentence in civilian life. Jimmy's archive. The screen darkens. A dim lamp casts a weak yellow light on the concrete walls of the office. An old map of Wales lies open on the steel desk. Nearby stands a glass of water, covered in small droplets. Detective Jimmy sits opposite in his beige coat. The snail in a small felt coat sits on the folder with the SAS case. Jimmy slowly takes the glass, takes a sip, and puts it back. SAS operators pass through the hardest filter of selection. They are prepared for actions in conditions of absolute isolation. But when you train the mind to ignore human weakness for a long time, the psyche suffers a deep and invisible crack. Let us break down the materials of this case in detail. The Brecon Beacons situation, intolerance of uncertainty. The snail slowly crawls along the contour map of the mountain route. It stops at the peak of Penwai Fan and freezes. Remember that heavy choice on the wet stones of the fan dance. When you decided whether to help the fallen candidate on the slope, the SAS selection is built on a complete lack of information about time limits. A person must run forward, not knowing how much is left to the end. This causes a strong intolerance of uncertainty. The brain of an ordinary person requires structure and constant feedback. SAS weeds out those who cannot act in an information vacuum. But in civilian life, this reprogramming breaks normal relationships. The veteran begins to experience wild anxiety without clear orders and plans. Psychological first aid. If you experience severe stress in situations of uncertainty, when there are no clear plans for the future, at work or in the family, learn to break the foggy picture into small, understandable tasks. Plan only the next hour or day, returning control to the body. Google intolerance of uncertainty, anxiety, military. This will explain the nature of your anxiety in peaceful conditions. The Brunei situation. Hypercontrol, and scanning the snail crawls to the image of a dense green forest on the map. It hides under the edge of the folder, imitating stealth in the jungle. Remember that choice in the humid forests of Brunei at the tracks of the patrol. When you decided whether to go for a risk to maintain stealth, the jungle trains the mind to constantly scan for threats. Any sound of footsteps or rustle of branches means mortal danger. This mechanism saves the life of a special forces operator in the forest. But returning home, the veteran continues to scan the environment. A persistent syndrome of chronic hypercontrol arises. The psyche spends a colossal amount of energy searching for imaginary threats. The body is exhausted from the constant release of stress hormones. Psychological first aid. If you catch yourself constantly controlling the environment around you, when you check locks 5 times or scan people in a cafe, consciously lower the level of control through bodily practices. Remind yourself with a voice that you are in a safe place. Google hypervigilance, scan PTSD, military psychology. This will help lower the tone of your nervous system in time. The Iraq situation. Clinical emotional numbing. The snail slowly crawls along the steel surface of the desk. It completely pulls its horns under the felt hat. Remember that interrogation under the lamp in Iraq and the choice of the friend's fate. When you decided whether to give the codes for the sake of saving your comrade, interrogation and sleep deprivation methods are aimed at destroying the personality. To survive in such conditions, the brain turns on a protective reaction. This phenomenon is called psychological numbing or emotional numbing. A person literally turns off the ability to feel pain and emotions. You become a living robot performing the task of survival. But returning home, you cannot turn the feelings back on. The veteran becomes emotionally deaf to his wife and loved ones. Psychological first aid. If you feel an internal emptiness and inability to rejoice when close people complain about your coldness and indifference, do not try to trigger emotions artificially through extreme actions. Start small. Write down 3 pleasant physical sensations for the day. Google emotional numbing trauma response recovery. This will help start the process of restoring your feelings. The London situation. Autonomic dysregulation. The snail climbs onto the open scheme of the building assault. It freezes at the image of the broken window of the embassy. Remember that fraction of a second before the shot in the embassy hall, when you made the decision to eliminate a potential threat. The assault requires an instant release of adrenaline from the body. A special operator's nervous system works like a perfect sniper. The sympathetic division sharply raises pressure and pulse to the maximum. But in civilian conditions, this internal switch breaks. The parasympathetic system cannot calm the excited body. The veteran's body continues to live in combat alert mode constantly. This destroys sleep and leads to chronic heart fatigue. Psychological first aid. If you cannot fall asleep because of a beating heart in your chest, and your body is constantly ready for a fight without a visible reason, use breathing exercises with an emphasis on a long exhale. Take a breath for 4 counts and exhale for 8 counts for the body. Google autonomic dysregulation vagus nerve veterans. This will help return control over the reactions of your body. The Hereford situation. Crushing moral residue. Detective Jimmy slowly closes the folder with the SAS case before him. He places his palms on the cover and thoughtfully looks at the table. The snail freezes on the very edge of the closed gray folder. There is a concept of the accumulation of moral residue in the human soul. This is not one big psychological trauma from a shell explosion. It is hundreds of small, invisible scratches on your conscience. Every heavy decision and unfulfilled promise accumulates for years. Over time, this load becomes too heavy for the mind. A veteran in Hereford suffers not from fear of the enemy. He suffers from the weight of his own unspoken memories. Psychological first aid. Moral residue accumulates in all who are forced to make decisions. Do not carry this heavy load alone at the bottom of your soul. Find a person to whom you can trust your thoughts without judgment. Speaking the pain aloud helps reduce its destructive weight. Google moral residue, LIT's moral injury, military. This will help clean the mind of the unbearable load of the past in time. Jimmy takes a last sip of water from his glass. He carefully puts the empty glass on the closed documents of the case. I'm just a detective, not a doctor, and not a therapist. If anything from this archive hit close to home, talk to a professional. They know more than I do in these matters. Jimmy stands up from the table and adjusts his beige coat. Like this video, if you understand the depth of this problem, we will continue to open archive cases for you on the channel. The light in the room goes out, and the detective goes into the dark.
Author's note: hello. The British SAS is a legendary unit with a century of history. Their famous motto is known to almost every history buff. Who dares wins. But for every victory over an external enemy, they pay with their soul. Their risk pays off at the cost of destroying their own identity. Today we broke down 5 complex phenomena of the mind in detail. And all of them work in our ordinary everyday lives. Intolerance of uncertainty prevents us from living peacefully when we try to control what is impossible to control. The syndrome of hypercontrol forces us to search for threats our own, turning a normal trip to the store into a combat operation for survival. Emotional numbing deprives us of the ability to feel, distancing us from loved ones and turning us into emotional robots. Autonomic dysregulation destroys our body with constant stress, not allowing us to restore strength overnight even in a warm bed. And moral residue quietly accumulates for years from small compromises, until it crushes us with its weight at the most unexpected moment. Go to the community tab on our YouTube channel. A new poll on the topic of today's episode is already hanging there. Which of these 5 phenomena prevents you from living? All information in the video is created solely for education. If you feel that you cannot cope with stress yourself, don't be afraid to turn to a qualified psychologist for help. Take care of your mental health and value your peace. No job and no duty are worth your mind. This was Detective Jimmy and Snail. See you in the shadows.